Dr. Wayne Visser holds the chair in sustainable transformation. He's professor of the integrated value of the Antwerp Management School. He is also a fellow of the University of Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership. His work as a strategy analyst, sustainability advisor, CSR expert, futurist, and professional speaker has taken him to 74 countries in the past 30 years to work with more than 150 clients. Wayne, take it away.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you all today. And what I'm going to talk with you about over the next half an hour or so is the notion of creating integrated value, which I really believe is one of the new challenges for the accounting, auditing, and reporting profession. To start with, we need to take a step back. This title, Creating a Shared Future in a Fractured World, could have been a headline in 1987, which was when we first coined the term under the Brundtland Commission of Sustainable Development, the United Nations report, Our Common Future. In fact, it was a title that appeared in the most recent World Economic Forum, this idea of a fractured world. So the challenge of sustainable development is still very alive and well today. This was me in 1987, and I would love to say that I don't look any different, but I have grown a little older since then. And when we look at the World Economic Forum Global Risks Report that was launched every year, this is the latest one, you can see that many of the most serious risks that global leaders are concerned about are very much still to do with sustainability. And so when we review then the last 30 years of sustainability, we have to say that there has been progress, especially if you look at the Millennium Development Goals. Extreme poverty dropped 47% in developing countries between 1990 and 2015, down to 14%. We also saw massive engagement of the civil society, so the NGOs of the world, of which it's estimated that there are now 2 million working on sustainable development. And we've had the business sector getting more and more involved through organizations like the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and the UN Global Compact and others. And most recently now we've launched the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, which are goals for the world's countries by 2030. So it does seem to be a story of progress, but we're not being honest if we also don't admit that it's been a story of failure. Here you might recognize the 3 hurricanes that hit the coast of America in 2017, an indicator of climate change, where the scientists are telling us that this is a clear scientific fact, that greenhouse gas levels are unprecedented in the last 800 years, and that's causing havoc with our climate. If we look at issues like refugees or forced migration, 65 million people around the world have been forced from their homes, and 22 million of those are refugees. If we look at biodiversity loss, so the loss of species on the planet, from 1970 to the current time, we've lost nearly 2/3 of the species on the planet, if we look at populations of vertebrate animals, for example. If we look at inequality in incomes, the latest report shows that the top 1% of the world population captured twice as much global income growth as the bottom 50% since 1980. So no surprise that inequality has been rising over the last 40 or 50 years. So there are still huge challenges remaining. And we really have to ask ourselves whether the Sustainable Development Goals that countries of the world have signed up to are really an adequate response, because there are real dangers, especially when we look at how business is responding to this, as to whether it's really going to be helpful or a barrier. Because there's a real chance that business might simply ignore the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. If we look at another set of standards, the UN Global Compact that I already mentioned, that's been around for a few decades now, and still we only have 10,000 companies in the world signed up to that, compared to hundreds of millions of companies around the world. There's a danger that business might spin the SDGs, that they might use it for public relations or marketing and promotion without really changing anything. I call that rainbow washing, which is a version of greenwashing or whitewashing, since they're using these colorful icons to promote their organization now. There's also danger that business could just cherry pick the SDGs, so they might just find one or two of them that they're doing something on already and therefore tick the box and say that they've done their bit for society and the environment. None of that will really change those trends that are heading in the wrong direction. What we really need is for business to adopt the SDGs, to innovate around them, and indeed to use them to transform the economic system, which is really at the heart of our current unsustainability. So how should we be thinking about this? I think at the moment, the missing ingredient is that we're not seeing the interconnectedness, the relationships and patterns that connect all of these issues. And we're not seeing especially how our economic activity is having really negative impacts on other areas such as social or human or environmental areas of our global society. So if we take a systems thinking perspective, there is lots of good theory on this, dating back all the way to 1926 with holism and evolution, all the way through to more recently chaos theory. And this really gives us an insight that when we have complex systems such as we have in society or in organizations or with our ecosystems, really only two things happen when they get disturbed, as our current systems are being disturbed. They either break down or they break through. And there is a chaos point, according to system scientist Irvin Laszlo, where it's beyond our control because we've delayed our action too long. And we have to really make sure that we don't get into that chaos point, that we take advantage of the decision window that we're still currently in order to make a real impact. Now, if we apply that systems thinking to the problems we face in the world, we find that there are 5 areas of breakdown. And the first is disruption. And this can relate to natural catastrophes, to pandemics, to industrial accidents, or indeed to market crises. If we look at conflict as a source of disruption, according to the Global Peace Index, only 10 countries in the world can be classified as conflict-free. And if we look at natural disasters, especially linked to climate change, these have increased from 200 a year in 1980 to 700 a year in 2016. So clearly, we are facing serious issues of disruption. The second area of breakdown is disconnection. This is how we share our technology, and is sometimes called the digital divide. As we can see in these pictures on the screen, there is very unequal access to technology around the world. In fact, 4 billion people still lack access to the internet, 6 billion people do not have high-speed internet, and nearly 2 billion don't use the mobile phone, with 500 million living outside of areas with a mobile signal. So serious problems there. The third area of breakdown is disparity. This is referring to the income inequality. And we can see these sort of pictures showing us how income is unequally distributed around the world. This is the essence of the Occupy movement that was sparked by the global financial crisis of 2008, and the talk of the 1% versus the 99%. And this is a fact that since 1960, absolute gaps between incomes of the richest and the poorest countries has grown by 135%. And it's not only between countries, but also within our companies that inequality has been growing. If you look at US CEO to worker pay, it's gone from 20 to 1 in 1965 to 300 to 1 today. So disparity, an ongoing issue that we need to address. The fourth area then of systemic breakdown is destruction. This is, of course, talking about our ecological breakdown. If you look at the top right, that image is of a seabird and all of the plastic pollution that is inside the seabird if you cut it open. And of course, we've got issues of air pollution deforestation, resource over-extraction, and so on. In fact, if we carry on our current trends, then we will have lost 2/3 of our species by 2020. Just think about that. Within one generation, 2/3 of the life on the planet wiped out. You don't have to be a genius to realize that if current trends continue, your children or even your grandchildren will have nothing left. And it's not so much about losing cute, fluffy species like panda bears. It's actually about undermining the ability for life to sustain itself on the planet when we start to mess with our life support system in that way. One of the most serious ways we're doing that is through climate change. So the predicted 2.5 degrees warming that we're on track to meet will have devastating impacts, not only on increasing poverty, which has been going down until now, but also to the global economy to the tune of $12 trillion by 2050. The last area then of breakdown that we see is discontent. And of course, this is dealing with issues of health and well-being. It can range from stress in the workplace to unhealthy diets and lifestyles. In fact, 40% of deaths today are from non-communicable diseases. In other words, from lifestyle-based diseases such as obesity, heart disease, strokes, all things that we can control and prevent. Depression and anxiety, as an example of mental illness, is also affecting 10% of people and going up, costing $1 trillion each year. So another area that needs some serious attention. This is all a framing really to say how can we respond positively in terms of creating value rather than destroying value. And so if we think about that, see, we've just got a duplication here. Then the systemic problems that we face can be viewed this way. Disruption, disconnection, disparity, destruction, and discontent, all coming together to cause fragmentation in society. But for each of these areas, happily, there are counterforces. So if we look at breakthroughs that are happening, we're seeing secure innovation that's tackling disruption in society through the resilience economy. This is any innovation that lowers risk in society, aids our recovery from disasters, and ensures business and indeed community continuity. It helps us address things like the problem of $330 billion losses from worldwide natural catastrophes in 2017, which has been increasing year on year. We see also smart innovation. This is countering, obviously, disconnection in the exponential economy. Exponential because it's the exponential growth of smart technologies that we've seen over the last few decades. It is, of course, about connecting people and things using big data and artificial intelligence to actually bring us solutions to the problem. These types of technologies are a huge opportunity, could be worth $1.36 trillion by 2020. The counterforce then to disparity is to find shared innovation in an access economy. So an economy that is more equitable, more fair, that is designed to be inclusive rather than exclusive, and that takes advantage of sharing platforms of the like of Airbnb or Uber, that allows us to indeed share our assets instead of owning them. PwC estimates that this could be worth $335 billion by 2025. If we look at the counterforce then to destruction in society, we see sustainable innovation in a circular economy. This is a picture of Kalundborg, which is in Denmark, one of the first industrial zones that was designed so that the waste from one industry becomes the input or the raw material to another. We call that industrial symbiosis. So anything that is about creating bio products or renewable products, that's about zero waste design and being climate positive, in other words, having products that actually absorb carbon and become part of the solution, these are the sorts of innovations that we're starting to see and that we desperately need. Again, a huge opportunity, according to Accenture, could be worth $4.5 trillion by 2030. And then the counterforce to discontent is satisfying innovation in a well-being economy. This is all about promoting human health, quality of life, and meaning in our work, and could again be a huge opportunity, $3.72 trillion in 2015. So all of these taken together are what I call the forces of integration, and they're the things that are countering or tackling those breakdown areas in society. And they really give us a clue to where value is being created in society rather than destroyed. And this starts to lead us on to how we also need to rethink our measurement systems. To give a few quick examples to illustrate, if we look at this company, Planet Labs in the United States, what they do is they have about 200 satellites, low orbit, low cost satellites orbiting the Earth. And they have a vision to image the Earth every single day. And what that allows them to do is to start to see changes. So if we look at this mine, Bingham Canyon, which is in fact the largest excavation in the world, and you look at how that has changed over time within 4 years, then you start to see that this could be useful because you track land use changes. You could start to see where deforestation, legal or illegal, is happening. You could see where forest fires are happening. And you can really start to use this as a way to create value. In this case, it's smart because it's using high technology. It's dealing with disruption. So you can see climate effects, you can see disasters effects, and of course, sustainable because you can start to address these problems like deforestation. If we look at another example, this is Tesla in the aftermath of the hurricane damage, the storm damage in Puerto Rico, rapidly setting up solar solutions to get them back on the grid, to get them from blackout to electricity again. And so it's dealing with disruption. So it's a secure innovation, but because it's using solar electric with battery storage, it's also sustainable. So as you can start to see, it's the overlap of these areas of value creation. Garbage clinical insurance is another in Indonesia. And what they do is they allow poor people who don't necessarily have good municipal services to collect their waste in their communities. And so when the community members themselves collect that waste, in exchange for bringing that in, they get a clinical or health insurance. And so this is creating a shared solution because it's making a more inclusive economy. It's obviously cleaning up waste, which is sustainable, and adding to people's health through the insurance. If we look at another example, this is Emma Yang, a young girl really, who has invented an app called Timeless, which helps people with Alzheimer's, in this case, this is her grandmother, to recognize people from her life, her memories, and really helps those patients to still live a good quality of life. So here again, we have a dovetailing of smart solutions and satisfying solutions. If we look at Provenance, this is a company that uses blockchain in the United Kingdom to track supply chains or value chains. You can see the example here of fish. And not only does it do this to be more sustainable, it's using smart technology, it's checking all along the value chain whether the suppliers are sustainable, but also it's inclusive because those that are more sustainable are being given access to microloans or microcredit, which empowers those micro producers in the value chain to be more viable. If we look at integrated value for another example, Planetarians USA. This is taking food waste and turning it into high protein, healthy snacks. And in fact, they're doing that not only to tackle the food waste problem, which is a sustainability problem, but also to tackle a health problem, especially obesity among children. All of these are examples of what I call integrated value. And if you're a company, then there is a methodology for actually making that happen within your company, which I call integrated value management. It's a 7-step methodology. So it starts with having an integrated view of the context in which you find yourself, looking at trends and technologies, legislation, standards, your competitors, really getting to grips with what are the mega trends and the forces in society that are changing around issues of social, environmental, and economic change. An integrated approach then to stakeholder assessment means listening to all of your different interest groups, whether it be customers, employees, suppliers, NGOs, or government, and really finding out what their concerns are. And then taking that into a leadership review step where you start to align that with your strategic goals. If there is a major customer concern or a major government concern or community concern, there must be a strategic goal that is measurable that can start to address that concern. And then you basically drill down within the organization to align your risk assessment processes, your breakthrough or R&D or opportunity processes, and finally also your governance, strategic planning, and other processes in your company, so that ultimately you end up redesigning your management systems themselves, so that you don't have silos, something addressing environment here and something addressing health and safety there and something else addressing social responsibility, but you have one integrated system. Where this leaves us is to rethink how we are measuring value in society and how we're reporting it. And this is not a new idea. We can go all the way back to the 1980s with Ed Freeman, an American academic who coined the term stakeholder theory. And so he talks about stakeholder value. This is in a way countering the older idea epitomized by Milton Friedman, an American economist who was all about shareholder value and going as far as saying that the social responsibility of business is to make profits. This is saying that shareholders are just one stakeholder and that we have to create value for all of them. And so we start to see an evolution of thinking on value creation. Here we had the four capitals model by an economist, Paul Ekins, saying that it's not only about financial capital and manufactured capital, which we're fairly good at measuring, but also about thinking now, how do we measure natural capital, the ecosystems and raw materials and living systems that we depend on, and human capital. Also in the 1990s, this idea of the triple bottom line came in. So how do we create value, not just economically for profit, but also for society, people, and for the environment, planet. So the idea of sustainable value coming in there. Jed Emerson, another pioneer in the area of what he called blended value, especially looking at impact investing or the social return on investment, questioning about how we create impact. C.K. Prahalad, together with Stuart Hart, was another one that came up with the idea of bottom of the pyramid. This is referring to the economic pyramid in the world and saying that we can actually create value among the 4 billion poor in the world if we think about servicing that market differently. And it became known as the BOP, or the bottom billion, and inclusive strategies for delivering value there. His co-developer on that, Stuart Hart, also came up with the idea of sustainable value, saying that it's not only important that we create value for the world's poor people, but that we also bring the most sustainable, the cleanest technologies and solutions for pollution prevention to be applicable at the bottom of the pyramid among the world's poor. Otherwise, it just becomes sustainability for the elite and for the rich. All of these are different ideas around value creation. Michael Porter, Harvard academic, came up with something also called creating shared value, which is to find those areas where you can create economic value and social value at the same time. For example, increasing the productivity of your farmers in your supply chain. It's good for the farmers, but it's also good for the company that may be buying their coffee or their agricultural produce. One of the more recent developments was the International Integrated Reporting Council, which said that we need to extend that capitals model to 6 capitals and begin to report on that in the same way that we report on financial capital. So going beyond financial, manufactured, human and natural, and including also social or relationship capital and intellectual capital. And some companies have started to use that as a way to measure their impact. In fact, there are a lot of different methodologies that are being experimented with now, which are all very exciting, starting to question whether financial reporting and auditing is enough. And if we look at Puma, they were one of the pioneers in creating an environmental profit and loss account. This measures the environmental impact of their products and puts a financial value to that. And they were able to show that their less sustainable t-shirt, normal cotton t-shirt, had environmental costs of 17% of the retail price, whereas their biodegradable, recyclable cotton t-shirt brought that environmental cost down to 12% of the retail price. If we look at the B Corporation movement, or the for benefit corporation movement, especially in the United States, we see another way of measuring companies where they have an impact report that looks at scoring the company on environment, workers, customers, community, and governance. And that's becoming very popular now, not only in the United States, but around the world. And we look at the big 4, and they're also innovating in this area. So PwC has come up with a methodology called Total Impact Measurement and Management, and KPMG has come up with one called True Value. And what both of these try to do is to measure those costs and benefits that companies are imposing or creating for society, and to actually put financial values to that. So I think this is a little window into how the world of accounting and indeed auditing and reporting is changing and will change in the future. What it comes down to in the end is that we're looking at those synergies where we create more value than we destroy. And that's how I understand integrated value. Can we find those solutions that are simultaneously secure, smart, shared, sustainable, and satisfying? And that poses a real challenge for auditing, for accounting, and for reporting. How do we measure those opportunities? How do we measure that positive value creation? Or if companies are ignoring that, how do we measure the value destruction in a way that is fair, that is transparent, and that gives society a better way to judge companies and to evaluate the impact of our economies? Unless we get this right, unfortunately, those areas of breakdown in society will tip us into wider scale breakdown. I think one of the keys to making this happen is to find leaders that are focused on this agenda. This links to some of my research work at Cambridge University, where we looked at the characteristics of sustainability leaders, and we found that they do have some traits that are different from the average business leader. So they're able to think in terms of systems, as an example, the interconnectedness between things. They're able to have empathy with their stakeholders, to really listen to their needs. They're, of course, visionary. They're able to convince people that we need to move to something very different. They also are leaders that have a set of values and ethics that drive them, and they're not afraid to speak about those values and ethics. They have an ability to think long-term and to act long-term, which is very difficult in the short-term markets that are pressured by financial systems today. And two examples are Paul Polman, the CEO of Unilever. One of the things they've done, for example, is refuse to report quarterly to the markets, because that incentivizes short-term behavior rather than long-term value creation. Or if we look at Hamdi Ulukai, who created Chobani, the food, especially yogurt company in the United States, has been very successful, but he makes a point of employing refugees in the company. So he makes it an inclusive leadership for that company. I like the quote of the co-founder of Hewlett-Packard, David Packard. I think he gets to the essence of this question of how we create value. He says, why are we here? I think many people assume wrongly that a company exists solely to make money. Money is an important part of a company's existence if the company is any good, but it is a result, not a cause. We have to go deeper and find the real reason for our being. So it really is about a purpose-inspired agenda, and it's about the auditing, accounting, and reporting profession keeping up with how we might need to measure that differently. So to end off then, I like to use this African proverb. I was born in Africa, and I think there's a lot of wisdom here. And it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's absolutely clear that in terms of the challenges that we face globally, the areas of breakdown in society, we will not solve those unless we do so collectively. So we have to go together. And that means that we need a different approach. We need that systems thinking, which I think is epitomized by this quote from Chico Mendes, who was a Brazilian rubber tapper, who was a real activist. In fact, he got murdered for his activism. And he says, at first I thought I was fighting to save rubber trees. Then I thought I was fighting to save the Amazon rainforest. Now I realize I'm fighting for humanity. That's the essence of systems thinking. That's the urgency that we have, the reason or the motivation why we need to act. And if we're successful, I think we'll be able to speak these words as Mahatma Gandhi did. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. So I hope that we will all win together, and that we will find new ways to create and to measure and to audit value in our societies, in our economy, and in our business. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wayne. This ends today's presentation. Thanks for watching.